Hello, everybody, and welcome to Jack's Corner. I'm your host, Tarzan Banana, and with me, as always, is our founder, Jack Figgle. Today, he's gonna guide us through how he got Robert Taft to join the ranks of the Orientale Lumen family, and some fun stories might come about it. This is due to the fact that we're almost done with the first series of Robert Taft's the Byzantine liturgy history. All right, Jack, take it away.
Good morning, Tarzan, and good morning, everyone listening in. It's good to be with you as we come down the final couple of weeks before Christmas, and everyone has Christmas gifts on their minds. Perhaps this might give you an opportunity to take a little break and listen to something other than Christmas carols and sales being offered to get your Christmas gifts bought from whatever vendor your favorite buyer is. Father Robert Taft was a very well known liturgist, even by the Orthodox, including His All Holiness Patriarch Bartholomew, considered him the best Byzantine liturgist in the world in terms of research about not only the liturgy of St. John Chrysostom, but the entire history and culture of the Byzantine daily office and Byzantine liturgies, and how the Byzantine church celebrated all the services of the church, how they were adjusted under the imperial support from the days of Constantine up through the days of Cyril Methodius, sort of the golden age of Byzantium in the middle of the first millennium. And Father Taft was an interesting character, to say the least. He was very, very smart, studied a lot, wrote a lot, and it was an honor and pleasure for me to get to know him. I think my first encounter with him was when had just started Orientale Lumen around 97 or 98, and Archbishop Vsevolod, one of our founders, the Ukrainian Orthodox Archbishop from New York and then moved to Chicago, who helped me get the first Orientale Lumen conference started with the help of Metropolitan Kallistos and Archbishop Vsevolod. Archbishop Vsevolod was coming to Washington for an event at the White House. He was frequently invited to state dinners and things involving high-level Ukrainian officials, and he was on their list of people to invite to fill the House with Ukrainian speakers, and to act as not only guests and tying into the politics of America, but also a basic need, and that was providing translation amongst the guests between English and Ukrainian. So Archbishop Vsevolod was a frequent visitor. The first time that he did this, he called a few days before and he said to me, "Mr. Figgle, I'm coming to Washington. I'd like to stay overnight. And I'd like to have you arrange for us to have dinner with Father Taft. I am told that he is in Washington this week." And I said, "Oh, Your Grace, I would love to, but I don't know Father Taft, never met him. But, I'll give it a try." So I put on my sales 101 hat from when I used to call on executives of clients who I did not know and was just trying to get an appointment back in my day as a computer software salesman, and called to Dumbarton Oaks, and I asked for Father Taft's room, and not too different, but slightly different. from how an executive was treated, he did not have a receptionist, and so he just answered the phone himself. And he said, "Bob Taft." I said, "Oh, Father Taft." I didn't expect him to get on the phone right away. I thought I had to go through a couple of more receptionists. And so I had to sort of quickly adjust my spiel to talk to him directly. And I explained to him that I was calling on behalf of our Archbishop Sevalod, and that the Archbishop wanted to come and visit him while he was in New York on his sabbatical. And Father Taft, as he would typically do with any first timers asking for his time, would tend to try to sort of put them off the old adage of "get away from me, boy, you bother me" kind of attitude of, I've got work to do. I don't have time to be just chit-chatting with people. And so, no, I'm sorry, I don't have time. I'm leaving for Rome in 2 weeks, and I have all this work to get done. And I made the immediate comeback, which turned out to work, and that was, "Well, Father Taft, you have to eat. We would like to invite you out for dinner." Well, that changed the reaction, right away. He said, "Well, yes, I do have to eat." And so we made arrangements for us to pick him up, to take him for dinner. A few nights later, the Archbishop came down by train from New York. I picked him up. We went and got him settled at my house. Then we drove downtown, met Father Taft at Dumbarton Oaks, picked him up at the airport, at the parking lot, the main entrance. And he came up to the car, and the Archbishop got out, and Taft bent over and touched the ground and asked for his blessing, just like you would any other Orthodox or other Catholic prelate, and gave him all the due respects of a bishop, a very ecumenical gesture. And then we got into my car and drove over to one of the best restaurants in Georgetown. It was called the 1789. So we went to the 1789 restaurant, and we pulls up, and they have valet parking. And as soon as we get out of the car and I give my keys to the valet parker and get my ticket, the Archbishop leans over to me and says, "Ah, yes, Mr. Figel, this is the kind of place to bring Father Taft." And so we walked in the front door. The maitre d' asked for how many, and we said 3. So we went and sat down, and in a few minutes, the waiter came by. But in the meantime, Father Taft, as he's sitting down, says, "Excuse me, I happened to see the president of Georgetown University over at another table." And so he excused himself and said, "Oh, I must go and pay my respects to the president. He's another Jesuit. I know him well, just to say hello to him." And so Father Taft goes over to the president and chit-chats for a while. And the Archbishop leans over across the table again to me and said, "Oh, Mr. Figel, this is really the right place to bring Father Taft if the president of Georgetown University eats here." So I made 2 positive points with the Archbishop in selecting the restaurant. Well, the waiter takes our drink order, and I ordered my standard Pittsburgh highball of bourbon and ginger ale. And the Archbishop ordered a Bombay Blue Sapphire gin martini straight up. And I never heard of Bombay Sapphire gin. And he explained to me that it was the best quality and one of the highest priced, and that was the kind of gin martinis that, elite people drank. So I learned that lesson. And Father Taft comes back, and having not heard that conversation with the waiter, sits down, and the waiter said, "Oh, and Father, what would you like to drink?" And he immediately says, "A Bombay Blue Sapphire gin martini on the rocks." And of course, I chuckle and say to them, "See, that's the only difference between Catholics and Orthodox. One takes it on the rocks, and the other one takes it straight up." We got to be able to come up with an agreement on all the other things if that's the only thing that we're different about. And they chuckled and laughed, and that broke the ice literally. And they'd been good personal friends ever since. So we had a nice dinner, and through the course of dinner, Archbishop Sevlot, always looking out for me and trying to help me with the Orientale Lumen Conference, suggested that Father Taft come and be a speaker at the next conference. And when an archbishop like that asks, Father Taft was hard pressed to say no. And so he agreed. And in fact, I think, set the theme based on input from Father Taft. And that was, I think the second conference was about Orientale and Lumen, more about ecumenical things, whereas the first Orientale Lumen conference was about the document Orientale Lumen itself. But then the third conference, when Father Taft was invited and was scheduled to come, was about Mary and her feast days. And that's the one that Father Taft was able to bring in his liturgical expertise and knowledge of the calendar and some of the theology of the feast days of Mary into the conversation. And so he then started appearing at Orientale Lumen conferences for the next 20 years after that, contributing almost always from the standpoint of liturgy. I think one year we were having some other topic, and I asked if he would speak on it, and he said, "Well, you should know better. The only thing I talk about is liturgy. So what's that got to do with liturgy?" And
Come up with something.
So I said to him, "Well, I thought maybe you'd be able to come up with something," but he said, "No, no, no. I'll pass on this year." So we did, and then so thereafter he would come, and after a few years of getting to know him better and traveling back and forth to Rome, he also indicated he wanted to come a few days early and stay a few days late with the conference dates so that he could make, a substantial trip of coming all the way from Rome. And so I would arrange for him to stay at my home. So when Father Taft would come before or stay after an Orientale Lumen conference, we would discuss having him video record lectures that he had been giving related to the liturgy in all sorts of other venues. And of course, he always retained copyright to his own material, so he felt that he could record it for other purposes. And so he would pick out a few selections, but with him, different from Metropolitan Callistus, he preferred to work from a completed text that he would read from. Even when he gave an Orientale Lumen paper, he always had a text up on the podium. And instead of, rather than reading sort of more spontaneously and talking about a subject that he had notes about, he would have a full, complete text. So I thought I would get smart in trying to make a homemade version of a double-windowed teleprompter so that he could be looking at the camera and reading his text off of a piece of glass.
That would scroll as he spoke.
Exactly. So it would not look like he was reading it from a piece of paper or from a screen, other than, so I created my own homemade 3 foot by 3 foot by 4 foot frame of wood with the glass and a place to put the camera and the two-way glass that made the whole thing work. And then I had to put a third piece of glass in, because when you look at a camera through a piece of glass, the glass automatically inverts the image. And so all the lettering was coming up backwards on the screen. And one way to fix that was to go in and edit every text file so that it read backwards from the computer. but that was going to be such a pain for all of his talks, because then if I had to edit something, it was really, really tough to find a word that needed to be corrected that was backwards. And so I came up with the engineering solution of putting a second mirror in for the camera. So the camera played from one mirror that flipped the image. That mirror played it to the double mirror that you could see through, which flipped the image again, and it came out straight. And of course, because of Father Taft's poor eyesight, I had to make a nice big letters with only a few lines because I didn't want his head moving from side to side. He was not a professional politician that could read a teleprompter without moving his head. And so that's what we tried, I think, for 2 or 3 of them. And then at the end of those, I decided that everybody knew he was reading a text, and therefore, why not put a piece of paper in front of him and just
let him read it.
Let him read it and let people see that he's reading it and be done with it.
However, the fact that you had to figure all that out kind of gives you insight on how the human eye works, how God had to make the human eye, because everything's going in upside down.
Yep. So that was how we got started with Father Taft. So we did sort of a random series, probably 3 to 4 lectures every visit. And Father Taft sort of had them identified, but not clearly into groups. And when it came time that we had done about 20 of these, I said, Father, we got to break these up into groups. Here's my proposal. So that's when I came up with the 3 packages in our AE series, numbers 2, 3, and 4, which are the history of liturgy, the spirituality of liturgy, and the theology of liturgy. And those are just buckets that I put the talks that he presented, that we recorded, into groups to put them into an AE package of 6 or 7 discs for each one. And for the most part, those recordings were done in my basement, where I have my own personal library. And so it's a pretty good acoustic room with bookcases and filled with books all on one wall, a nice acoustic ceiling tile, and a nice big Turkish rug from Istanbul on the floor, and all the other things you typically have in a good sized room. And there was room for Father Taft to move around and sit in chairs, and we can have different kinds of scenery behind books, in front of chairs, in front of icons on the wall. And at that time, I also had a young fellow for the summer that was working, that he would come and spend a day or 2 with Father Taft recording things. And then he would do the editing for me, and I'd finally produce the talk. So we captured Father Taft, like we were doing with Metropolitan Callistus, the essence of their teachings. And those first 3 AE packages was where we got started. A few years after all that, Father Taft came to me and said that he was going to be giving a retreat to the Ukrainian Catholic students here in Washington, and that he had designed the retreat in such a way that he felt the content should be a book. And so that was the book, Liturgy, Model of Prayer, Icon of Life, that we did publish as a book. And then we took the various chapters and sections of the book and had him read the book into a video camera. And we made a complete set of videos for that, which is another AE package. And we've done that for 1 or 2 other of his topics. And we've also taken some of his Orientale Lumen speeches and put them into other packages with other OL speakers and called them Orientale Lumen Through the Years, or in the case of Taft and Callistus, Orientale Lumen with Taft. through the years, where we take all of Taft's talks from an Orientale Lumen conference and put them all together as an 8 to 10 disc package with all of his lectures over a 10 or 12 year period when he was doing a lot of our conferences. One of the bigger conferences in which he participated and was a major player was the OL 14, which was also the Euro East 3 conference in Istanbul on the same topic of the church councils. And so he and others, including Callistos and Sister Vasa and a few others, spoke about the ecumenical councils and how they impacted church unity or disunity. And we had talks, some of which were the same and some of which were different, both at two locations in the US, Washington and California. And then we had a third conference on the same subject in Istanbul later that summer, in which both Taft and Callistos spoke at both of those and pretty much gave the same talk at each one. So those were all the things we've done with Taft over the years. And very proud that we've been able to capture things that he has not ever written into books or written as essays even. We've just captured them as audio visuals of him. Towards the end, the last couple of OL talks, when he had retired from his teaching position in Rome and spent the last 2-3 years of his life at the Jesuit Retirement Center in Weston, Massachusetts, outside of Boston, I would fly up and spend 2 days with him, recording one typically, or sometimes two lectures for him to then be used as an OL presentation during a conference, because I had by that time got the equipment and the expertise to be able to do all this video recording myself and edit the results and produce a show that people were willing to watch and listen. And it was a way to get some of these, more senior experts to participate without having to travel. They could stay in the comfort of their home or where they lived, and I would go around and get them to talk into a video. It wasn't interactive. They wouldn't take questions. We had to wait for Zoom to come along for that to work. But we were able to get remote speakers that I would go around and collect by plane for the month before the conference, and then we would show them at the conference to everyone else who came. So that's how we got Father Taft.
There you got Father Taft.
Archbishop Vsevolod passed away, I think, before Father Taft did. And I took my cameras to both of their funerals and recorded them. And they're now special events on the OLTV streaming video series for people to go see what a real funeral of an Eastern bishop is like. And in the case of Father Taft, I think he spent a whole year designing and writing authentic translations of a Byzantine funeral of a Hieromonk monk.
All right, then.
So both funerals were captured, and I feel good that we've honored them with even a recording of their funerals.
Yes. Just another thing that the final thing that Archimandrite Robert Taft gave us.
Yep.
The official OLTV funeral.
Right. That's right.
Wow.
So that's what's going on with OLTV these days with regard to Father Taft. And we have some other presenters that we can talk about next time that I recorded in different parts of the country on different topics, both Catholics and mostly Eastern Catholics, but a few others. And we can delve into them a bit more next time.
All right, then for all those listening, thank you for coming to this episode of Jack's Corner, and we can't wait to see you back next week. God bless.